Hello my friends, this is my Model 3 Performance. I've had this for almost a year now, and I've driven more than 15,000 kilometers. Unlike most journalists that just get a few hours to review a car, this is my full in-depth review of my experience owning and driving a Tesla long term. We're going to cover all that I like and dislike about the car, we'll uncover the truth about EV charging, and since this is the performance version, we'll also have a brief look at the track mode setting, which allows you to do some fun stuff like this. And while track mode definitely was one of the reasons why I wanted the performance model, the bigger reason was the much more aggressive exterior design. All the black contrasting details make a really big difference, separating it from the non-performance models, and I think it just looks so good, especially in this pearl white colour, where the contrast is even more evident. Another difference with the performance model is in the interior, where you get a pair of sporty front seats, offering much better side support than the standard ones. Having done a 2,000-kilometre road trip, I can also attest to the comfort of these seats. I have no issue whatsoever being seated in these for 12 hours at a time. By comparison, I've driven cars where I'd be in pain after just 4 hours of driving, and that is definitely not the case with these seats. Being perforated and having a cooling function also helps tremendously on hot days. Equally does the heating on cold days. Another part of the appeal of a Tesla for me is the very simple and minimalistic interior. Now, I also know this isn't for everyone, and some people prefer to have physical buttons, but for me, I personally do like this setup a lot. As you can see, we also have a child seat in the back, and so far it has worked great as a family car. Now, I must mention that unlike most other cars, there are no ISOFIX holes between the backrest and seat, so you kind of have to force the metal fixing points between the leather, which is kind of nerve-wracking and could potentially rip the leather. In terms of practicality and boot space though, the Model 3 is quite impressive. This, for an example, is the stroller we have for our kid. If we wanted to bring it in the VW Golf, which is the most sold car here in Germany, it's too big for it to fit fully assembled in the boot, and we would have to put part of it on the front seat. By comparison, we're actually able to fit both parts in the boot of the Tesla. There's even plenty of space available for several other bags to be squeezed in besides it. Plus we have a front compartment too, as there's no engine occupying the space here. And before I forget, there's even an additional storage compartment underneath the regular boot. The only thing I would have wished was that the armrest would open up to the boot, but unfortunately this is a fixed piece and you have to fold down a seat if you're transporting any longer items. Admittedly, this isn't really an issue day to day, but it is a bit of extra hassle when we go skiing and have to give up a seat space for the sake of being able to transport our skis. All in all though, there's truly an abundance of storage space, and we've been very happy so far. Now let's talk about the one thing that is probably the biggest divider of who chooses to buy a Tesla, and that is the infotainment system. And some of you may think, why is it the infotainment system? Well, it's because it's a major part of why a Tesla doesn't feel like a car, but more like a gadget. A lot of people just don't want to deal with that aspect when they're choosing a car, my father included. I showed him all the bells and whistles of the Tesla, all the features that I found cool and useful, but ironically, all of these features made him feel like it was too advanced, and he just wanted something that was more similar to what he was used to. I suppose everything being controlled by a large screen is a deal breaker to a lot of people. I personally do love it though, but I am also not someone that care about having physical buttons, as I really don't get the issue with touchscreens. I've now had this for nearly a year, and I've yet to encounter a single issue. The only argument I keep hearing is that you need to take your attention off the road to click on something, which is utter nonsense, as the same people complaining about that are doing the exact same thing with physical buttons as well.
Because you have to look down to press it, and you really do have to look down because it's not a physical button and it's touch sensitive.
I had nothing on track. I'm just going to go to automatic, whack it into normal.
So yeah, as you can see, even Matt himself is clearly looking down to locate the physical button he is going to press. It's just a completely natural thing everyone does, and is a part of reaching towards something. We always look to where our fingers are going, regardless if it's towards a physical button or a touch screen. It's just one of those arguments that I'm really tired of hearing, as it's completely false. Anyways, back to the infotainment review. Since this is an electric car, and charging underway is going to be inevitable, Tesla has included a nice couple of features for passing the time while you charge. You can either find a movie on Netflix or go on YouTube and catch up with your favourite creator. If you want to do something a bit more creative, you can even play a variety of games. I'll be honest though, I usually watch something on Netflix or just be on my phone. And I guess this is a perfect segment into the topic of EV charging, because boy are people forgetting one important detail here. As you probably know, there are big talks about how long it takes to charge while underway, and the figure is always somewhere around 20 minutes to go from 20 to 80% charge, which is also correct, but it just doesn't account for the detour you have to take to go from your route to a nearby charging station. In this example, I recorded a typical scenario of charging underway. Now, I know some chargers are closer than others, but I also know that some chargers are even further away. Having done a lot of road trips, I believe this is a pretty good example of the average experience, at least here in Europe. So let's remember that the time was exactly 1 o'clock when we started slowing down to get off the highway. And as you can see on the map, the supercharger is actually really close to the highway we were driving on, not even more than a few hundred meters. Of course, traffic lights took a short while getting through, but this is a 100% real-world scenario. And here you'll also see another thing that can and will happen at a charger. As I'm reversing into the charging bay, I was luckily able to notice that the charging cable was left on the floor. In my experience, this means that the charger has an issue, and it's a nice gesture made by someone else to let others know not to waste their time trying to charge at this station. Luckily, I didn't waste a couple of minutes additionally figuring that out on my own. Instead, I just immediately moved the car to a different stall. As I finally plug in the charger and the car starts to charge, the time is now 7 minutes past 1, so it took us 7 minutes to go from our route till we started to charge. We're currently at 3% charge, which is honestly ideal, as the lower your charge is, the faster your charging speed will be. I've often enough had some kind of issues at a supercharger, either that the stalls didn't work and you had to waste time figuring that out yourself, or that you have to charge at an older station where the speeds are shared between other cars, effectively only allowing you to charge with a third of the car's capable speed, making those earlier mentioned 20 minutes much longer. Once you get over 40% state of charge, the speed also quickly drops off, where we would charge with more than 200 kilowatts below 20% charge. Once you're at 50, then you're only getting 90, and it just continues to drop off from there. So again, my recommendation would always be to get to a charger with as low charge as possible. As we finally reach 80%, the time is now 41 minutes past 1. We charged the car from 3 to 80% in 34 minutes. The time needed to go from 20 to 80% was exactly 30 minutes. Now let's get back on the highway and see how long time we spent in total. Again, we have to drive the few hundred meters, and then I'll stop the clock once we get up on the highway. This, I suppose, is a fair place to stop the clock, just before merging back on. And we'll add a timestamp at 46 minutes past 1. So what does that mean? Well, in total, this quick little charging stop actually took 46 minutes. A big contrast to the 20 minutes charging we're being sold by the advertisers and auto journalists. Definitely something you need to keep in mind if you're considering an EV and you do frequent long-distance driving. Obviously, for shorter trips and day-to-day driving, this isn't a concern at all, and it honestly works so great when you're able to charge at home. You don't need to worry about filling up petrol for the next day. Just plug it in, and it will be ready in the morning. But let's talk about the real reason why people love driving EVs, me in particular. And that is the instant torque and massive power you can get out of these electric motors. It's honestly just so much fun. Not only is it fun, it also makes overtaking incredibly safe, as you don't need to worry about whether or not you'll be able to make a pass on a B road. The power is always instantly available, and you'll in no time be able to have made your pass without any concern whatsoever. Equally impressive is when driving at higher speeds on the highway. The power is still there. Just a quick press on the pedal and you're instantly pushed back into your seat, making overtaking someone even at faster speeds no problem at all. If you want to learn more about the performance figures and how different the battery's state of charge affect those, I have a dedicated video about that. I'll leave a link for it down in the description. Quick facts, it is fast. 3.1 seconds from 0 to 100 and roughly 8 seconds from 100 to 200. with a top speed of 263 kilometers per hour. Of course, at those speeds you aren't going to be driving very efficiently. So how is the efficiency and consumption of the Model 3 Performance? Well, it's really impossible to say, as it depends on so many factors. If you watch my other road trip videos, you'll see that I've had everything between 12 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers to more than 25. For those that may be considering a long-range all-wheel drive and this performance model, I can pretty confidently say that the only difference between the two is going to depend on the wheel size you choose to put on. Allow me to showcase that with a practical test I did with my brother-in-law that drives a 2021 generation all-wheel drive. For this test, we both drove the same route, a 200-kilometer drive to a Tesla centre, as I was going in for a quick service appointment. Conditions weren't the best, as you can see. It was winter, just around freezing temperatures, and it would occasionally come down with a little rain. I was on 19-inch performance wheels without any aero caps, and the long range was on 18-inch wheels with aero caps. As far as I know, the aero caps should make as much as a 5% difference, but since I am on a slightly bigger wheel on top of not having aero caps, theoretically I would assume we would have a 10% difference in consumption. During our trip, we continually kept in touch, and the 10% difference was actually spot on. We would drive at various speeds, sometimes at more than 150, other times a little less. And by the end of it all, I arrived with a combined consumption of 212 watt-hours against his 190, so almost spot on with the 10% difference. Meaning, if the only thing holding you back from a performance model is the concern about it being less efficient than the long range, then just put on a pair of 19-inch wheels and you should be very, very similar. But once again, if you want some in-depth information about the consumption of the Model 3 Performance, then do check out some of my other videos made specifically to cover that. So, what upgrades have I made to the car so far? Well, I have actually added a few things. The first thing I changed was the floor mats to a set of rubber ones with snap-on carpets. I added some cooler bags for the front, an organiser for the centre console, side organisers for the boot, new puddle lights for the doors showcasing the Tesla logo, and the sexy knob together with the sexy commander. The sexy knob definitely gets my recommendation as there are so many practical options you can set it up for. My favourite thing, of course, is the integration of the LED lights to work as a blind spot indicator and a warning when you don't pay attention. If you want to learn more about the accessories, you can also check out a dedicated video. I'll again link it in the description. So what are the things that I like about the Model 3 Performance? Well, I have to say that the number one thing is that this car gives me the best of both worlds. It's super efficient when I want it to be, but it's also a monster when I put my foot down. Its performance is basically similar to that of a new BMW M3, which, as most of you probably know, is an incredible high-performing car at nearly twice the price of this one. What else? How about never having to visit a petrol station again? I just plug in at home and every morning the car is ready to go. No more worrying about fuel prices, no last-minute stops on the way to work. It's just there, always fully charged at home. The Tesla app is a game changer. No more keys, no more fumbling around. My phone is my key and everything is seamless. Plus it saves multiple user settings, so if someone else drives, the car adjusts automatically to their preferences. Another small but super convenient feature, the electric boot opening with the phone in your pocket. Hands full? No problem. Just stand next to the boot for a second and it will automatically open up. Let's talk performance. 0 to 100 in about 3 seconds. It's absolutely insane, but beyond just speed, performance is safety. Being able to get out of dangerous situations quickly is a huge plus. And for the car enthusiasts out there, track mode lets you fine-tune power distribution, stability control, and cooling. It turns this already fun car into a beast, and without traction control in winter, you can really have a lot of fun on slippery streets. Cold mornings? No problem. Hot summer days? Also no problem. With the Tesla app, I can preheat or pre-cool the car before I even get in. While heating a car isn't anything new, cooling the car in the summer hasn't really been possible before EVs, and we honestly use it all the time. Next up is the audio system. If you're like me and love listening to music in your car, you'll be very pleased with this system. There's plenty of bass and really good clarity, even if you go to full volume. Here's a small sample that may at least give a small idea about the sound. Yeah, I'm not sure how well you're able to hear it through a cheap microphone, but I can definitely attest to the sound quality being very decent. And since we're already playing around with the rear screen, here's why I like it. While travelling with a young child, my partner usually sits in the back to keep him company. From there, she can control the music, follow the navigation, and even watch a movie or play video games if she wants. Though most people would probably just opt to watch something on their phone. So while the screen is a bit gimmicky, it does have some neat features nonetheless. Speaking of gimmicky features, let's talk about the automatic drive selector. As this model has neither stalks for your indicators nor for switching gears, everything happens on the touchscreen. In a recent update, Tesla added some added functionality so that when enabled, it can even automatically switch gears for you, and it works really well. As you may notice in that clip, I didn't even have to put it into reverse or forward. It all did that automatically. Clever. Now let's get into some of the things I've learned that I don't like. The charging infrastructure for electric vehicles is an absolute mess. It should be simple. Pull up, plug in, pay a reasonable price and be on your way. But no. Instead, we have a chaotic jungle of different providers, each with their own apps, RFID cards, subscription models, and pricing schemes that make no sense. With petrol or diesel, it's straightforward. Drive up to any station, check the price, which varies a little but not drastically. Fill up and pay. But with EV charging, the same charger might have different prices depending on which network or subscription you're using. And let's talk about subscriptions. Why should I have to commit to a monthly fee just to get a decent price on electricity? Imagine if petrol stations made you sign up for a premium fuel club to avoid paying double at the pump. It's ridiculous. We need a universal system, transparent pricing, a simple payment method, and fair rates across the board. Until then, charging an EV will continue to be far more complicated than it should be. And why is destination charging still such an afterthought? You arrive at a hotel, a shopping centre, or a parking garage expecting to top up your EV, only to find nothing. Or worse, there is a charger, but it's either blocked by a petrol car, out of order, or occupied by someone who plugged in hours ago and left. Unlike petrol stations where you know you can refuel, destination charging is a gamble. Too many businesses treat EV charging as a nice extra rather than a necessity. If they do offer it, there's no guarantee it'll be available or even functional. We need more chargers, better enforcement, and a shift in mindset, because right now relying on destination charging is like expecting Wi-Fi that actually works in a hotel, which is also a disaster in and of itself. So yeah, the charging network still has a long way to go, not just in terms of coverage, but also in making it actually convenient for real-life travel. What else? I could mention the stiff suspension, but that wouldn't be fair. I deliberately chose the performance model, fully aware it would come with a firmer setup. It's still fine as it is, but an air suspension with a proper comfort mode would have been incredible. As it stands, there's no real comfort setting, just sport and track. I also wish it had 3-zone climate control. Right now you can't set a separate temperature for the back, only adjust the airflow. And lastly, what I dislike is also something I kind of like, the silence. No engine sound. As relaxing and peaceful as it is, I wouldn't mind some artificial sounds like BMW and others offer. It seems like exactly the kind of playful, slightly ridiculous feature they'd have fun with. I mean, they've added fart noises when you lock the car, so why not this? So the big question, would I buy one again? Absolutely. The user interface, drivetrain, performance and software all come together seamlessly. Compared to other EV brands, Tesla is still ahead in many ways. That said, the Xpeng G9 definitely caught my attention, and I think European automakers should start paying closer attention to emerging Chinese brands. Anyways, Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you're considering a Tesla and found this video helpful, I'd of course appreciate it if you used the link in my description. Not only will you get a great discount, but it also helps me earn some free supercharger miles to support my road trip videos. And of course, drop a comment below if you have any questions. Thanks again, and I hope to see you all again in my next road trip video. Cheers.